the sign of a weak economy. A weak economy is a sign of a weak nation. Good evening and welcome to Face the Nation live from Stein Studios in Ratmalana. Our topic of discussion today revolves around the state of the country's economy and the controversial Economic Technology Cooperation Agreement, or ETCA, to be signed with India in the near future. To discuss all this and more, joining us this evening on the show is Dr. Haritha Aludge, Assistant Secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Dr. Aludge. Also joining us this evening is no stranger to the show, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Good evening and welcome to the show, Dr. Vijayawardena. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Kesarao Gunsekara, former Member of Parliament, also the Deputy Mayor of the Devula Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
So let's start off with Dr. Vijayawardena. Dr. Vijayawardena, the state of the country's economy. We've lost 1 billion rupees in January alone in terms of reserves. Where is Sri Lanka really heading in the next 12 months? Your time starts now.
Yeah, Samir, now you have very correctly identified one of the ailments from which we are suffering today. You have referred to the current external sector crisis Sri Lanka is facing. But apart from that, we have to understand that Sri Lanka's economy is a very bad shape. Our growth rate is falling. Foreign reserves are falling, as you have said. In January alone, $1 billion have gone out of Sri Lanka, so that the total reserves have fallen from $7.3 billion to $6.3 billion. In the next 2 months, another $1 billion is to be spent by Sri Lanka on account of repayment of debt and payment of interest. At the same time, the government budget is in a very bad shape, as again identified by the IMF mission that came to Sri Lanka. So what we are suffering today is a major macroeconomic issue in the country, and the economists call it macroeconomic imbalance, because we find that the credit is growing, the inflation is picking up, foreign reserves are falling, exports have already declined in 2015 by about 4%, and the trade gap is same. It has not declined, even though we have the lower oil bill in 2015. Growth has fallen from around, say, 7.5% to 5% in 2015. So with all that, what we have to conclude is we have a serious economic problem facing the country, and the government has to take extraordinary measures to rescue the economy from the current ailment from which we are suffering. Of course, we have to give credit to this government, because the economic crisis didn't start with this government. It started about 5 years ago in 2012, when Sri Lanka had a serious balance of payments problem in the country, and we didn't take any action to correct the balance of payments there. So right now, as it is, the main solution which the government can introduce is to go before the IMF and get a bailout package.
Mr. Vijayawardena, 2015 January 8th, prior to the presidential polls, everything seemed okay. There seemed to be nothing wrong with the country's economy, and suddenly we are talking about the depreciation in terms of our foreign reserves. We are talking about the fluctuating currency. What is the reason behind it?
The main reason is, Samir, that the numbers that have been published by the previous regime were very doubtful, and there was no any attempt by the new government to correct them. What they did was they actually certified the same numbers, and as a result, now the new government has to face the tune now.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Let's now move our attention to Dr. Haritha Aludge, Assistant Secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association. Dr. Aludge, last 5 to 6 months, you all have waged a lot of wars against the government, against the people of this country as well, against the people of this nation, the very people who made you all doctors, professionals. What was the thinking behind these wars that were waged during the last few months?
Good evening, and from the GMO side, I would like to first thank this program for inviting us. And this is nothing new for the GMOA, and we have fought many battles. For like example, the agrochemical battle, milk powder battle, there's a battle against NCDs, and even in the schools there are trend of NCDs coming up, and there's a chronic renal disease going up in the north central province. All these things we were involved, and this is nothing new, and all of a sudden this came up because of the this Indo-Sri Lanka proposed agreement, which was initially called as SEPA, and now they are calling as ETCA. And the GMO's battle against SEPA was goes back to 2012. Actually, in 2012, we had several rounds of discussions within ourselves, and we were against SEPA, some of the clauses in SEPA, and now the government is proposing somewhat different structure in the name of ETCA. We are against this new trade agreement because we have several bad experiences. In the medical side, we had a very bad experience in 2012 because there were more than 180 substandard Indian specialists who came using some loopholes in the medical ordinance, and they were coming here and practicing freely in the private sector of this country, and they lacked quality, and the patients' lives were at risk. There were some instances where some cardiothoracic surgeons from the National Hospital of Sri Lanka, they complained to the GMOA that these substandard clinicians or the specialists from the Indian side, they have operated upon some patients, Sri Lankan patients, and they even couldn't close the chest wall of those patients, and therefore those cardiothoracic surgeons, they complained to the GMOA, and then the health minister was the president, Minister Maithripal Sirisena, and we went to Minister Maithripal Sirisena, and he proposed that we should act immediately, and with the health ministry and the Attorney General Department, we had several rounds of meetings. As GMO, as a trade union, we proposed some proposals to the health ministry, and they have agreed our proposals. Therefore, this specialist registry and the proposed evaluation procedure for the specialists came up, and once this is implemented partially, most of these unqualified people, they have gone back to their countries, but still our house is not in order, because in other sectors also, like for example in the engineering field, in Sri Lanka they don't even have a definition for an engineer.
You said house is not in order, Dr. Aludke. Do you mean to say that the country's health sector is not on par with international standards?
The standards is not a problem, but the regulations, there are some lacking loopholes.
I have a question to you, Dr. Aludke. Why is it that powerful ministers of the present regime and the former regime always, whenever there is a medical requirement, fly to Singapore and not seek medical advice in Colombo? What is the reason behind this?
That, of course, you have to ask from those ministers, because our standards is far ahead of some European countries, like for the maternal death rate, infant mortality rate, all these things, we are ahead of Southeast Asian figures.
Probably it's because the government is footing the bill. Is that
you have to ask from those
Thank you very
ministers.
much, Dr. Harith Aludge, Assistant Secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association. I now move my attention to Mr. Kesarwal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament, now the Deputy Mayor of the Behbala Mount of India Municipal Council. Mr. Gunasekara, what is your take about ETCA, the Economic Technology Cooperation Agreement to be signed with India? Do you think it's advisable to go ahead, or do you think it's not necessary at all?
Well, I initially think that the term you used in calling this agreement a controversial agreement, I don't think that term is correct, because none of us are still aware as to what the agreement is, because it has not been finalized. Even the draft from our side is still not finalized. Am I right? It's not finalized. Therefore, we are on the surface, we are trying to gauge as to what the clauses that would come up. and making certain statements. Now, we need to understand that we are a tiny country, and if we are to move forward, we need to liaise with other countries as well. If we do not liaise with other countries, we will be still in one position. Now the question here is, in moving forward, are we protecting certain sectors in the country is a question. I feel that if the medical GMOA has a problem, a legitimate problem, it has to be addressed. But at the same time, I would say this to the GMOA. Now, this has been on the cards since 2002, I think. 2002. They had ample opportunity to make representations to the Commerce Department or the government, whatever it is, and make them understand as to what their concerns are. And if those concerns are not heeded, then in that case, the GMO has every right to take its present stand. I still feel what the GMOA should do is to go into negotiations with the government authorities and find out for themselves as to what are the areas that needs to be improved upon if they feel that there is a threat. If they can do that, then I feel that we can move forward. But we must understand that this is a long drawn process. It's not going to, I don't think that this ETCA can be signed as in a short period. I feel it will take time because the Indians have still not responded to that. We do not know as to what their responses are going to be. And once they come forward with responses, we will also respond once again. So it will take some time.
So you mean to say it won't be signed in the near future, like in June?
I don't think it can be signed in June. I don't say, I mean, any agreement can be signed, but I feel that the government must ensure that they give the agencies proper time to look into this matter, submit their concerns, and they look into as to whatever changes that could be made, and thereafter move forward.
Mr. Gunasekara, do you mean to say that when you refer to the GMOA, that the GMOA is always trying to put the people at risk by conducting strikes?
I don't think it's correct for me to make that statement because whatever said and done, we must accept that we have quality doctors in this country, and the GMOA consists of those doctors. We have quality specialists in this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekara. Beats me why as to why ministers, powerful ministers of the former regime and this regime, resort to going to a country like Singapore, when individuals like Mr. Gunasekara and also Dr. Alutge confirmed that we have one of the best medical practices, medical standards.
It's all
as far as the region is concerned.
It's all psychological.
It's all psychological. Indeed. Let's open the floor for our journalists to pose questions from our three guests. On to my right is Nadeem Majid. Nadeem, nice to have you on board. For our Shaukat Ali, with popular demand, we're discussing your topic this evening, and also our young boy here, young chap, Saturang Haporachi, joining us this evening on our show. So let's open the floor for questions. Let's start off with Faraz.
Right. Thank you. I think this question should be to Dr. Alutge, please. Sri Lanka is a small country. We need opportunities to open up and not confine ourselves to merely sending unskilled labor abroad. And so why do you oppose this with such vigor?
Sorry?
Why are you opposing this ETCA? The Prime Minister is not very happy with you all.
Yeah. Regarding ETCA, actually, as far as the GMO is concerned, the GMO consists of doctors. They are not economists, but we have studied some facts recently, and why we are against ETCA is because we had a very bad past experience. The points we have gathered is that we have the services. This is a services agreement. Initially there was a free trade agreement signed between India and Sri Lanka in 1998, and it was after about 15 or 16 years of this agreement, we have studied that the trade deficit of Sri Lanka in favor of India has widened, and other thing is that even though we have signed this free trade agreement, Indian side, they are having these non-tariff barriers imposed by the Indians. They are separate taxes in the states, and all those things matters, and restrictions in the ports and all these things comes up when the Indian side is coming up. And as I mentioned earlier, our bad experience with the Indian specialist, so-called specialist, we have come up with these proposals, as Mr. Kesaralal mentioned. This is a book called The Health Sector Contribution to the Knowledge Economy. This we have published in 2012, and in this way we have proposed how this answers your question, because this in this way we have given our views regarding the opening up of the health sector, and how our doctors could go to the foreign countries. And this is the other book, that is the establishment of specialist registry and the introduction of an evaluation procedure.
But what is this the book that the CID is investigating?
Yeah, this is the book that
Right.
CID is questioning.
Okay. But what harm if Indian specialist doctors are permitted to enter Sri Lanka under this ACT thing as opposed to the BOI? What harm? Because in any event they'd have to go through this Sri Lanka Medical Council.
Because there are some loopholes in the medical ordinance, and to cover that we have proposed this introduction of an evaluation procedure. But this procedure is not fully implemented yet, because some private hospitals, they have gone to the courts, and still the case is pending, and therefore this procedure is not yet finalized, and we have to keep our house in order, and this introduction of an evaluation procedure should be finalized, and we have to had this national policy before implementing this sort of actions.
But the Prime Minister says that there's a need to create 1 million jobs, and this part of this ETCA thing is all to do with that as well. So why are you so bitterly opposed to it? That's the question.
We are not against trade agreements and the goods and other things coming up into Sri Lankan territory. We are not against it, but the opening up the services is the worry. The Prime Minister is also making some contradictory statements, and as far as we know that the Prime Minister initially said there won't be SEPA, and they have changed the name to ITCA, and he said in Parliament the service sector won't be touched. But we are having a close dialogue with Minister Malik Samaravikrama, and Minister Malik Samaravikrama gave an invitation to us to discuss the service chapter of the ETCA. It contradicts with the Prime Minister's statement, and the other advocates of this this agreement, they are having contradictory statements. Like, for example, Dr. Harshad Silva said that Mode 4, that is the natural persons, they won't touch it. But Dr. Saman Kalegama, when we had a last meeting on 16th of this month,
Dr. Alitke, why is the GMOA getting involved in non-medicinal issues? And surely you should leave that to the Prime Minister and his other advisors.
Yeah, that is
why? On what basis are you being the sort of self-appointed opposer of these matters?
Yeah, because we had a very bad experience, and we were given the 2 offer list of the Sri Lankan and Indian sides. Those 2 offer lists, health was included, and the framework agreement which was given to us by Minister Malik Samaravikrama, it says in a separate clause that even though this IT sector and the marine engineering will be initially included, they will gradually remove and eliminate the restrictions. Therefore, even if the health is excluded, if the IT is opening, we know how much IT is involved in health these days, and opening of the IT opens every field as far as the GMO is concerned. Therefore, we are a bit worried, and we are still having a dialogue with Minister Malik Samaravikrama, and we will meeting tomorrow also, and next working committee meeting will be on 26. We are having a dialogue, but the bit worrying factor is they have given a framework, because a time frame, and February they said that they are going to sign this framework agreement, and June they are going to finalize this thing. The GMO's concern is, without a national policy, how can they do these things of this nature?
Mr. Wijayawardena, do you agree with the concerns that Dr. Alutge is putting forward, or do you think that the GMO is trying to keep Sri Lanka's economy protected and closed?
Yeah, in fact, Nadeem, now, but with due respect to Dr. Alutge, because he said he is not an economist, so we'll have to admire that frank admission. And because when we sign a trade agreement with another country, the objective is not to create a trade surplus. Objective is to create trade between the two countries. The trade includes both imports and exports, and what has happened in the case of Indian free trade agreement that we signed in 1998. Before we signed the agreement with India, when we exported one item to India, we were importing 11 items from India, 1 to 11. Now that particular ratio has come down over the years, and in 2014 it was when we export one item, we are importing only 6 items from India. So that means there has been a growth in the trade.
Because realistically, considering the size of India's economy and the size of Sri Lanka's economy, even if the trade deficit between the two countries continues to widen in favor of India, realistically, is that something that can be stopped given the size of India's economy?
No, actually the deficit is not widening in favor of India. Deficit is actually changing in favor of Sri Lanka, because that's what I said. When we export one item to India today, we have to import only 6 items from India. So it has actually changed over the years in favor of Sri Lanka. But of course, what we have to consider is, now India is a big economy and Sri Lanka is a small economy, and many people have the fear that a small fellow cannot do trade with the big fellow. It's not the truth, because if it happens, Singapore, being a very small country, cannot do trade with USA, because the two countries are so different. So the one thing that we have to admire is that India is just sitting north of Sri Lanka, next to us. It's a growing economy, and in the southern 5 states, if we take, they have the largest middle class in India, and what actually happens is that if we have a good trade relationship with such a neighbor, we have a bigger market. Now one problem which our producers face today is that they cannot sell only in Sri Lanka. So that is why we have to produce to a country, produce to a market which is pretty much bigger than the market in Sri Lanka.
Mr. Wijayawardena, do you see EDCA as a negative or a positive?
No, in my view, one thing is, as Mr. Gunsekara has very correctly mentioned, so far it has not been finalized. Because I know, because I have been involved in trade negotiations in the past, and it's a long drawn process, and even by June we cannot sign the EDCA agreement, because right now what is happening is some loose ideas have been presented in the form of a draft agreement by the Sri Lankan team. And that agreement has to go to Indians, and Indians will have to discuss it and they have to respond to that. So it's a long drawn trade negotiation. But on the on balance, what I say is, now if we open the service sector to India, that is not bad, because Sri Lanka has to get its economic growth not from the pure agriculture or manufacturing in the future. We have to get our economic growth from the services sector, and to do that we have to have a bigger market to sell our services. Now even if we look at the manufacturing side, and the different stages of a manufacturing product, when one analyzes it, about 10 stages, out of those 10 stages, 9 are services. And what it happened is, now we cannot in the present context produce a good in Sri Lanka alone. We have to join the Asian supply chain, and if we have to join the Asian supply chain, India is the valid contender for us. So
Dr.
that is why we
Can I draw a question to Dr. Alutge? Dr. Alutge, now in your initial speech you stated that the GMOs was very much involved in about the NCD issue and the milk powder issue. Now the Government Medical Officers Association aren't there pressing issues the Government Medical Officers Association should be discussing right now, like the alleged kidney racket? Even as Shamir mentioned, powerful ministers going abroad. Don't you have to defend the health sector as the trade union for the health sector? Are you doing your job properly now?
Yeah, at the moment we are depending those things and also speaking about these sort of things, because this also is this process of Indian-Sri Lankan agreement. We think that if it is signed, it is a irreversible process, and we have the past experiences, like for example the previous government's hedging deal and all those things, and therefore we are a bit worried, because the other things are also we are speaking, and we have done several publications, and we are at the moment going parallel with these things also.
Dr. Alutke, I have a question for you. Now, medicine, as far as I understand it, I'm not a doctor, I have to make that frank admission as well, but as far as I understand it, medicine is a constantly evolving discipline. From the time of Hippocrates to now, we're seeing major medical advances being made across the world. If we keep the medical service in Sri Lanka closed, without any exposure to the advancements that are happening in the rest of the world, even in India, as I understand it, India is making great leaps in pharmacology at the moment. So if we keep Sri Lanka's medical service closed to the rest of the world, how can we expect to be providing the best service possible to our people for free?
Yeah. We are totally against closing of the services. We are for the opening. That is, one must understand that, and this is health sector contribution to the knowledge economy, and we are for the opening, and even the doctors, specialists who are training for the specialist these postgraduate degrees, they are going to the European countries and they are getting the skills, attitudes and the knowledge from those countries. Not as this Indian side is, they are lacking the knowledge, skills and the attitudes, and we are far ahead of the Indian this health sector in those aspects, and therefore we think that we should open, but we have to have the regulations in order.
So are you saying that you would be open to having European doctors come instead of Indian doctors?
The European doctors or the Indian doctors, that don't matter, but there should be standards in the Sri Lankan system, and the doctors who are coming here should have standards.
Mr. Gunasekara, you've been silent for some time now, so I thought I'll pose a question to you.
I love to listen.
Associations like the GMOA has always been opposing issues or opposing proposals that have been put forward by respective governments over the recent past. That has been quite evident when you take a look at the last 5 to 6 years as well. We've signed similar agreements with other countries. We have similar agreements with countries like Pakistan. When the Pakistan PM was here, we had a similar agreement, exchange of knowledge. Why is it that organizations like the GMOA are so worried? Are they scared?
No, the question is, number one, I fundamentally feel that the GMOA needs the services of economists in their organization, because if they are supported by, especially, I'm sure Dr. Vijayawardhan will be in a position to recommend a couple of people. It's very essential, because I see there is a point in what they are saying. In order to move forward, they need somebody to assist them and tell them as to how they could put their problem across. But the issue here is, you need to manage the conflict. You have to go after management of the conflict. There is a conflict, because the GMOA says one thing, or the government or the Commerce Department says something else, and they are at loggerheads. That's not going to be the answer.
But that's called negotiations at the end of the day.
Pardon?
That's called negotiations at the end of the day.
Yeah, you need to negotiate on level playing field. Now, as to whether that can be done by the GMO at present, I don't know.
So you're trying to say the GMO is not competent?
No, I don't say that. My God, no. I say that they need the economic specialists in their ranks to take this matter up. It's far more better if they are armed with some economic specialists as well, so that they will be in a better position to put their problem forward. There is another issue, fundamentally the fear is the invasion of the territory. I mean, I feel that the GMO fears the invasion of the territory, which has to be accepted. But at the same time, once things open out, things will move forward. Things will move the other way as well. we have to be mindful of one aspect. When you're dealing with India, I don't know whether Dr. Vijayawardhan agrees with me. When dealing with India, you have to be extremely careful, because Indian concept is be Indian, buy Indian, and only Indian. If the trade surplus moves in our favor, they will move heaven and earth to ensure that they change it. But we should still keep begging and moving forward. That is what we should do.
Before we go in for a short commercial break, you all have medical professionals. Why not recruit or hire an economist?
That we will consider.
You can definitely get some tips from Dr. Vijayawardhan on that. So, yes, Faraz, one question I can
you
give you.
mentioned hedging in passing. What did you mean? What has the GMOA got to do with hedging?
No, the thing is that we have, because of these problems, we have studied the recent
But
past.
did you make any representations during the Rajapaksa years about
Because
the hedging?
that didn't involve the health sector. That is why we were not commenting about
But
those sort of things.
or were you all scared of
No,
the fear
thing is,
psychosis?
we started this against the CEPA in 2012. When that was the president.
But the hedging was a big subject, didn't you?
No, it
if you
was
were
not,
worried, did you not
we don't
issue
have
a
a direct-
statement?
We don't have a direct involvement because it does not cover the health sector.
So you weren't frightened?
No.
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are in conversation with Dr. Hayrat Aludgi, Assistant Secretary of the GMOA, Dr. W. Vijayawardhan, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, as well as Mr. Kesar Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament and Deputy Mayor of the Dehavel Mount Municipal Council. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, discuss about the country's economy. Where are we really heading? All this and more after this short commercial break. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We start off the third round with Mr. Kesar Gunasekara, Deputy Mayor of the Dehavel Mount Municipal Council. Mr. Gunasekara, an exchange of knowledge, won't it really benefit Sri Lankans at the end of the day?
It will.
The time starts now.
It will. What we need to understand is, if we are to move forward as a country, we have to get in the technical know-how, the technical knowledge in the entire world. And for that, we have to liaise with countries. We have to move forward with countries. We have to exchange goods, services with countries. That's the only way out.
And won't ECA be the way forward for us as a country?
Well, ECA will be, as long as we tackle it properly. But as I originally said, I feel that the government should give a chance to the professionals to put their concerns forward and give a hearing to that. That is essential. Because in moving forward, the government needs to understand that they must address concerns. If the government does not address concerns, it's a tragedy.
Why isn't the government doing this?
I do not know as to whether they have not thought about doing it, but as I said, and as Dr. Vijayawardhan agrees with me, there is still time. So negotiations can take place in the near future.
You said, Mr. Gunasekara, that India usually acts very selfishly when it comes to their own will. Whenever they want to promote something, they do it by hook or by crook. Does this worry you in any way?
No, I did not use that term by hook or by crook, but what I said was, that's their nature. By nature, that's how they act. We must be mindful of that. As long as we are mindful of that, and as long as we can move forward, that should be the way.
Does this attitude worry you, Mr. Gunasekara?
No, it doesn't worry me. Because we need to understand that that's their identity. If you go to any forum where Indians are present, you will observe that.
Will Sri Lankans lose job opportunities as a result?
As long as you handle it properly, I don't think so.
Is it a good way
Because
forward?
we as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, take the health sector. I feel we are masters technically, because I have a couple of friends who came from abroad who are specialists in other countries, and they say our Sri Lankan doctors are of great standards. They confirm that. So I fundamentally feel that we are having a good set of doctors, but the only thing is we seem to have problems with the GMOA. As to why we can't resolve this, I don't know. But we need to resolve that.
What sort of problems?
Well, as you can see it if you go through newspapers, listen to news, every day it's something about the GMO. I don't think we should take it to that level. We have a, if you give me a couple of seconds, I will explain to you. This country, for it to move forward, needs the confidence of all sectors. Now, what is happening in the present day context? Take the media, the electronic or the print media. What is displayed is not something that is definitely conducive towards moving forward. Every day it's a conflict. Every day it's an issue. People lose confidence then. Somebody might ask whether the government is at fault for that. No, I don't think so. The government is trying their level best to move forward. You have to support. You have to support the government because the government is democratically elected. And if you don't support the government and ensure the country, because the country suffers at the end of the day. What we need to understand is we have to manage all conflicts rather than making issue after issue and giving wide publicity to all these issues. It's certainly not the way forward. We need I will tell you the role of the media is quite simple. You can always show the government the correct way forward, or else you can show the government, look here, this is a problem, that's all. But you must understand that at each time, if people start attacking the government from all corners, all quarters, the government will not be in a position to function properly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekara.
That's important.
We'll leave it at that as far as your third round time frame is concerned. We now move on to Mr. Wijewardena, Dr. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Dr. Wijewardena, you said that trade negotiations are important, and it's a very long-standing process to sign an agreement like EDCA. If so, why is it that the Prime Minister of this resplendent island is taking a very autocratic position, saying that he will go ahead no matter what happens? What is the reason behind this?
We'll have to understand that country is in a very bad situation right now because our economy is falling, and we have to earn as much as possible foreign exchange to fill our reserves. So in that sense, for the government to move forward, as Mr. Gunasekara has very correctly identified, he has to do a lot of trade negotiations with other countries, not only with India. He has to do another trade negotiation with China, then Singapore, South Korea, Japan, European Union, and also Canada and USA, because those are the countries with which we do our trade. About this trading and the self-interest, trade is naturally a self-interest, Samir, because trade is not charitable. If it is charity, when we have to get goods free of charge. Trade is self-interest, and what happens is in a market is that the two self-interest will meet each other, and as a result both parties have a win-win situation. So when we sign this agreement with India, what would happen is, as Mr. Gunasekara has said, the Indian people are very shrewd, they are smarter. So we have to make our people also shrewd and smarter. So that is why our team will have to be represented by representatives from GMO, then the Engineering Association and the United Professionals Movement, which they have set up now, the Central Bank, Ministry of Finance, the politicians, chambers. All these people will have to represent Sri Lanka when we go before India. So that is how SEPA was drafted. When SEPA was drafted, Sri Lankan team was led by Mr. Ken Balendran, who was the chairman of the John Keel's group. And we had the representatives from IPS, from Central Bank, from chambers, from unions and so forth. The Indian team was led by its Deputy Governor, Rakesh Mohan, the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. So likewise, right now, as Mr. Gunasekara says, we have so far not come to a situation where we have to get the views of these different experts on the subject.
Dr. Wijewardena, do you think that India has a hidden agenda?
There can't be hidden agenda, because whatever that is signed, it has to be implemented openly, because you can't keep it secret. Because trade, what is happening is now, when in any country because of the some people want to take the negotiations away from the particular movement. There are some movements to derail it. So that is why even the Prime Minister is very adamant and he is saying that he would sign it. Of course, you know, he has to sign it. Without signing it, he cannot open Sri Lanka's economy to the rest of the world.
Is the Prime Minister acting based on the whim and fancy of the Indian regime right now?
No, it can't be, because the trade negotiations are done on an equal footing by the two parties. So therefore, I don't see, because I know how CEPA was negotiated and both parties were moving towards the same goal.
The Indian Prime Minister during his visit to Sri Lanka said that he wants to look after the interest of the people of Sri Lanka when he met with the President at the Presidential Secretariat. Do you think ETCA is the way forward for
No,
that?
ETCA is a trade agreement, because looking after the people of Sri Lanka is a wider objective. ETCA will simply cover, if we go by the previous CEPA, Samir, the previous CEPA had the good trade in goods, trade in services, transfer of technology, private direct investment, and setting up Indian higher learning institution in Sri Lanka like the Indian Institute of Technology, then developing the railway system in Sri Lanka. So it was a wider thing. So
Which was never signed?
No, it was never signed because it was draft agreement was prepared. And it was negotiated and they agreed, both countries agreed, but unfortunately there was a change in the government in April, and as a result the government that came to power didn't want to take it forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijayawardena, for your thoughts. I now move on to Dr. Haritha Alutge, Assistant Secretary of the GMOA. Dr. Alutge, Mr. Gunasekar said every time he sees the papers, he sees problems relating to the GMOA. Do you agree or disagree?
The thing is that even though the GMO is targeted, we are not alone, and we have this 40 professional groups within our this same view, and we have formed the United Professional Movement. It consists of all the engineering associations and even the Sri Lanka Administrative Services officers. They are inside this United Professional Movement, but unfortunately, GMO is targeted, and because I think we are raising our voice far more, and GMO is the first organization that proposed that we should have the national policy prior to signing this Indo-Lanka agreement, and I would stress that GMO is not against signing of the trade agreements between two countries, and our worry is that even without these sort of trade agreements, there are things coming up that worries us. One such example is this emergency pre-hospital Indian ambulance network. It has, the MOU has been signed and the cabinet paper was presented. This is the cabinet paper, and it was presented to the cabinet by Honorable Prime Minister, and this is especially interesting because this is a health related cabinet paper, and even though it is health related, the Prime Minister had presented it, and we have many worries in this cabinet paper and the MOU, because in this way this comes as an Indian donation of around 7.6 million US dollars, and this name of this Indian institute is the GVK, Emergency Management and Research Institute, and you know that Sri Lankan health sector consists of two sectors, that is curative and the preventive sectors, and there is a private sector also. But this new institute they are going to form within this cabinet paper is this independent institute that do not belong to either of these categories, and they have the separate clauses in this cabinet paper. It says that all the donations and other deals from the Indian side and the Sri Lankan side will go through this new institute. And interestingly, this is not a branch of GVK, Emergency Management Research Institute. This is a separate institute they are forming. Therefore, the responsibility does not lie with the GVK management, and the powers of this institute is the bit worrying factor, because the selection of the staff, recruitment, transfers, disciplinary action, ending of the job contract, selection of funding, especially the procurements, all these goes to this independent institute, especially in regard to the procurements, the procurement of drugs. you know that there are some restrictions in the health ministry and the related authorities in procurement of drugs in Sri Lanka. Like for example, diamorphine is a drug which we call as heroin in common language. If you have no the barriers in procurement of these sort of things, and the national policy is violated, there will be problem. And regarding this, there is this management committee formed to implement this emergency pre-hospital care. Even the committee, the balance is in favor of India. 7 out of 11 people, the Indians are there in the committee.
Dr. Alutke, you said that you all represent 40 other professional bodies. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Yeah.
A few months ago, Dr. Alutke, I happened to go to a private hospital in Colombo to receive some medication. And usually they have this documentation system where they print the consultation in a proper system. However, this time around, when I went to the hospital around a few months back, they had a piece of chit saying hospital charges this much and the consultant fees are this much. And I asked the person, obviously who billed me, what is the reason behind this? And they said that the doctors concerned want to evade the tax ring. Why is this, Dr. Alutke?
That I don't know, because it involves the private sector, and we are the Government Medical Officers Association, and that you have to ask from.
But you all do endorse somewhat private medical practice as well.
Yeah, that may be individual practice of some doctors, not as a whole.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alutke, for your views. Let's start off this round with a young boy, Haporachi.
Thank you, Shah. Question to Mr. Deputy Mayor. Now, if EDCA is in an initial stage, and if things are moving well with EDCA and it takes time, why is there an EDCA phobia going around? Is this politics?
EDCA phobia created by
Politicians?
I don't think politicians have created EDCA phobia.
However, certain politicians come forward to the media and say that Indian boys and girls might even start working at communication centers here in Sri Lanka. This is not creating a phobia amongst the general public.
As I said, I don't think politicians are talking about EDCA phobia. Maybe others are talking about EDCA phobia.
But is there a phobia?
I don't think so.
Is there a problem about job securities in the country?
With regard to any agreement, you will always have fear, because you must understand, as I said before, it's the territory that we want to protect. That's always the case. We can protect the territory, we can be with ourselves, that's all. We don't need anybody else, that's fair enough, we can move forward. But you cannot move forward. As a country, you can't move forward. You need others to come in as well. And you need our people also to go to those countries. That's one
However,
way.
agreements that were taken up between countries like Pakistan, that was mentioned earlier, we hardly heard about it. Being in the media, we knew about it, but people at home, they probably didn't even know about it. But that went well. Why EDCA?
No, I feel that the media has taken it in a big way, and the GMOA also is contributing towards it. I'm not blaming them. They have a legitimate right to talk, because they feel once their concerns are not being addressed, they have a right to talk. That's all. As far beyond that, I don't see any politicians getting involved in ITCA, because I have not seen this in Parliament. I don't know. I have
Dr.
not seen.
Vijayavardhan, is there EDCA phobia going around in the country?
Well, of course there is, because I have seen, what is known as this united opposition in Parliament. Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena had already mentioned that he is opposed to EDCA. Then JVP has made this EDCA anti-EDCA campaign there. So there is a political element behind this also, but what we have to think is that as a country, Mr. Gunasekara has very correctly posited it, because as a country, if you want to move forward, we cannot remain in this island. If you remain in island, it's a very restricted area.
That's all.
And that restricted area has to expand, because how Singapore became a developed country within one generation was by opening it up. And there was no any concern about Sri Lankans going and working in Singapore, or when other people coming and working in Singapore, because they had the clear policy where they invited all kinds of experts. So Sri Lanka will also invite experts from India, experts from other countries to come and work here. And but of course this particular EDCA that we are talking about, they have taken out the provision relating to the migration of natural persons. It's not there in the draft agreement which is being prepared by the government, and therefore even GMOA or any other professional body does not have to worry about it now.
However, Dr. Alutge, we all carried out a handbill campaign at the Fort Railway Station about 2 weeks back, and in that handbill, correct me if I'm wrong, in that handbill a heading was that job opportunities will be granted to Indians who come here. But now, according to what Dr. Vijayawardene is saying, there's a contradiction there. Then what happens to your policies?
This is regarding mode 4, the natural person, this thing. And thing is that government was stating in some instances that they won't open this mode 4. And but we had a meeting on 16th of February with the Trade and Commerce Ministry, the delegation which went to India, and there the Dr. Saman Kalegama was quite open, and he said that they will open the gates for the IT sector only. This mode 4 they will open, not this as mentioned by Dr. Vijayawardene. It won't be closed for any sector. And on the other hand, the economist who is advocating this Indo-Lanka agreement, some were telling that they are pressurizing the government to open this mode 4. Therefore, we are not secured, and we are a bit worried about this opening of the mode 4.
Let me ask you once again, Dr. Alutge, are you scared of EDCA?
Thing is that we have not finalized. They have not finalized the agreement yet. But as far as the things are going on, we have some worries about EDCA.
Dr. Alutge, the ambulance service that you spoke of, the MOU for this was signed in, correct me if I'm wrong, when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi came here last year. Why is the GMOA only bringing up this issue now?
No, we discussed this issue about 3-4 months back also, but the media...
But this was signed in March last year. I was there, I know, I was present.
The cabinet paper is on 2015 September.
But the agreement, the bilateral agreement, where the Prime Minister said, and later Deputy Foreign Minister Harsha De Silva had also said that that it is being given as a gift.
Because most of these things were kept under secret, and we got to know about this cabinet paper and the MOU only about 3-4 months back, and thereafter only we raised our voice, but much publicity to the media was given only after this EDCA framework it was discussed.
Doctor, I'd also like to ask you, you were talking about this ambulance service. We have independent ambulance services in this country, don't we? We have the St. John's ambulance service. We have private sector ambulance services like FAC.
We have the government ambulance services.
We have the government ambulance service as well. So why is the GMOA not worried about the St. John's ambulance service or the private sector ambulance services? Because this would also essentially be just another private sector ambulance service. And I imagine that the country has laws. I mean, just because you're a private company and not part of the government doesn't mean that you can violate the law in terms of drugs.
Yeah, the thing is that some of the this ambulance services you have mentioned, they are some of them are NGOs or BOI projects, but here it's totally different, because this is a independent institute they are creating, and they have the rights to recruit people and also the transfers and all the discipline procedures, and their powers are much more, and other.
But even in procurement of drugs, they still have to adhere to the laws of the land, the laws of Sri Lanka.
But that does not, it is not mentioned in the cabinet paper.
But does it need to be mentioned that you have to follow the law?
But
for example, it's said in the law that I can't kill someone. But does that mean I can't claim ignorance of the law and go and kill someone anyway?
That is somewhat true, but the thing is that this independent institute, they have the much more authority than this BOI project, because they have done their own feasibility study, and if you come to a need survey, they are going to start this thing in the western and the southern province. I don't know whether it is the real need is in the western province for the ambulance service, because we know that some of the maternal death cases we have discussed in the recent past, most of these things have happened in some remote areas like in Monoragala, Uva province or the north central province. And also in this cabinet paper there is a category code they have mentioned as a special medical treatment the people, and I don't know whether they have given a definition or this are those people doctors or paramedics, and the protection for these people, and it will be given by the Sri Lankan police and the other sectors in this government, and job visas for the trainers and the managers will be given by the Sri Lankan government. And the other hidden thing is that they are going to recruit people from the Sri Lanka, they say. Then they have put the paper advertisement on 9th of February, and they only day prior to the interviews, and only few people has come up. And other thing is that for the ambulance driver they will pay only 25,000 with inclusive of all the allowances, and for this special
how much does a government ambulance driver make?
With much more than this 25,000 rupees.
But what's the basic salary of a government ambulance driver?
That of course it's with the
30.
extra
About 30.
Perhaps they mean Indian rupees.
Yeah, that's the thing, that the big worrying factor.
So then it is above 30, isn't it, if it is Indian rupees?
Sorry, can I direct a question at Dr. Wijewardena, please? Does it bother you, Mr. Wijewardena, that in September 2015, the Prime Minister made a statement in Parliament that they will not be signing CEPA, and then now we are told that he will sign ETCA, despite the efforts of traitors. Does it bother you that he didn't quite say that he won't sign CEPA, but he will sign something called ETCA in the future? Or what's the difference?
No,
Perhaps you can
actually,
explain the difference.
he has actually presented the correct position, because he will not be signing CEPA at all.
Yes, because it's no
So
more.
it's truth.
So he's been economical with the facts.
No, what he has done is, because I have read through the draft prepared by the Sri Lankan team regarding this ETCA, I find ETCA is not CEPA.
Right.
There's a vast difference between the two.
Right.
And as a result, what is being signed is ETCA is a new generation agreement, because CEPA we prepared it in early 2000s, but of course the world has changed now. As I told you, we have to look at how Sri Lanka can get itself connected to the Asian supply chain. Now India is one of the important countries in the Asian supply chain. So what we are planning to do is, through the services sector agreement and technological transfer from India, we are going to join the Asian supply chain. So that is why Prime Minister would have said, I am not going to sign CEPA. But of course he didn't say that he won't sign ETCA. No. So he will be signing ETCA.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, because ETCA is completely different. Because now I think what has happened is that GMO and all other professional bodies which have made protest against ETCA, they were having CEPA in their mind.
I see.
That is the mistake that they have done.
They're not being traitors.
No, I mean, if you go through, of course, the CEPA, if anybody wants to access the CEPA agreement, it is available in the GMOA website. Anybody can download it from GMOA website. CEPA agreement, draft agreement, signed by Ken Balendra and Rakesh Mohan from India.
Yeah.
And that CEPA agreement runs it about 200 pages. And they have very specifically said the migration of natural persons and establishment of the various other kinds of technological institutions in Sri Lanka and so forth. But what we find in the proposed ETCA is a truncated one, which is directing Sri Lanka towards joining this Asian supply chain, where India is one of the important partners today. So what we are planning to do is, by jumping onto the bandwagon of India, we are trying to reach China, we are trying to reach USA, we are trying to reach Japan, we are trying to reach South Korea and so forth. So this is actually, already India is in the supply chain. We are going to join the caravan now. By doing that, the Prime Minister is planning to take Sri Lanka also towards this wider economic country. That's why Prime Minister is very angry now.
So in your view, nothing really wrong in
Nothing
piggybacking?
wrong in my view, because as far as an economist, nothing wrong. But of course, as Dr. Alutge says, if Indian doctors are substandard, and if they are coming to Sri Lanka, then you have to control it not through ETCA, but through some other mechanism.
and it has to be controlled. If that
You
is the
can
case.
control, because if they are not if they are substandard, you have to control them.
That is I
mean, even not only those doctors, even some of the doctors who pass out from some of the universities in Sri Lanka, they are, of course, their standards are questionable.
Mr. Gunasekara, Dr. Alutge was talking about the ambulance agreement that was gazetted in September, however was signed in March last year, was brought in as a secret. Do you think EDCA will also be brought in as a secret?
No, that would have been, I fundamentally feel that would have been a pledge between the two prime ministers. Of course, once that converts into a reality, it takes time. That's why the cabinet paper has come subsequently. That must be the reason.
Will EDCA also come in like that?
Pardon?
Will EDCA also be coming as a secret and then told to be implemented?
Well, EDCA also will have to be signed. But as I said, I categorically say that the government owes to the organizations, the professionals, to heed their concerns. That the government has to do. And I'm sure the government will do that.
Why is the Prime Minister making remarks saying that he will still go ahead if the professionals come on board with him on this or not?
I think
that
Dr. Vijayawardena answered that properly, because I feel that the Prime Minister also has to understand that things have to move forward and you can't be wasting time. If this issue gains gigantic proportions, then you are in serious trouble. Therefore, what he said is, we need to sign this, we need to move forward. Don't take it amiss. I feel that you must understand, as the Prime Minister, it's the onus is on him. The onus is on him.
it's negotiations that need to take place for a considerable period of time. Do you agree with that?
It will.
June
take
seems
some time.
very, very close, just a few months from now.
Now the question is, we have to understand that there is a draft prepared, but as to whether that draft is also final, we do not know. But definitely the Indians will come forward with their response. And once they come forward with their response, we will have to reconsider back again.
Dr. Alutge, what's your stance on private medical colleges? Sri Lanka has a very limited university intake. Why does your organization appear to oppose private medical colleges? Isn't it better to have more doctors?
That is also wrong, because GMO is not against private medical education.
What are you against then, Dr. Alutge?
Sorry?
What are you against?
What are you against then?
We are against this the current situation with regard to the Malabe Private Medical College, because it lacks standards and it is going against the SLMC, which is the governing body of the Sri Lanka medical education. The Sri Lanka medical education is governed by the SLMC, and they have the set of guidelines which governs the how to set up a medical institute. And this Malabe PMC, they are going against it, and they are not recognized by the SLMC. Therefore, the GMO is against this Malabe PMC because it lacks standards, and it will produce low quality doctors, and therefore the lives of the patients' lives will be at risk.
Dr. Alutge, many students who fail A-levels, advanced level examination in Sri Lanka, go to countries, example Nepal, Russia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, to receive their medical education, MBBS.
Yeah.
So that is okay, that is fine. That is fine, because you all know exactly where they are studying, and the standards are quite good in those countries.
Those universities should also have to be recognized by the Sri Lanka Medical Council, and once the students is going there, they have to go to the SLMC and get the this certification. They have to go through this SLMC website and check whether this university they are going is recognized by the SLMC, and even after coming here, they have to set for a existing exam, that is a Sri Lankan exam, to practice medicine in Sri Lanka.
Why not we as a country increase the standards of these medical institutes in Sri Lanka and keep that revenue itself in the country, because we're talking about millions of rupees going out of the country in foreign exchange? Why not the GMOA step in and say, okay, these are the standards that are required, let's conform and make sure that we move forward and establish a proper private medical university in Sri Lanka? Why aren't you all doing that?
The thing is that should be a policy decision that should be taken by the government, but we saw in this 2016 last budget, the government has said that they won't going to start private medical education in Sri Lanka.
But isn't that important, imperative to a country like Sri Lanka?
That you have to ask mainly from the government, because the government has to fund the state universities.
As GMOA, what is your view on this? Do you think private medical universities should be established in the country?
There should be a scientific approach, and if the government is willing to fund the state universities to increase their intake, that will be a much better option than opening the private medical schools, because these standards should be much easy to maintain when it comes to government institute rather than the private institutes.
Doctor, I'd like to ask this question to you again. We were talking earlier about medicine being an evolving profession. Sri Lanka doesn't do much in terms of medical research, does it? We don't have much in terms of medical advancement. Medical advancements that are made in other countries, we then apply it here. One of the reasons for this, pundits would say, is that there is no private sector innovation happening. So isn't it good to have good research colleges in Sri Lanka where research is being undertaken, not just in medicine but even in other fields, in chemistry, in pharmacology? Why this phobia of private sector?
Yeah, that is a very valid question, and we are also admitting that fact that we have to expand our research sector because it will improve the health sector in Sri Lanka in general.
Dr. Vijayawardena, you are a lecturer, a head of a private university in Colombo. What is your take on this? Do you think private medical institutes should be established?
We have to establish more educational institutions in Sri Lanka through private sector as well as through the government sector. There's no question about it, because there's a large number of students who pass the GC A-level examination, but they cannot get into a university in Sri Lanka.
With good marks?
With good marks. I mean, even if you get 3 A's now at GC A-level, you can't join a state sector medical faculty today. So because of that reason, there's a big demand, as Mr. Kesalal Gunasekara also has pointed out earlier, and Faras also had pointed out. The students have to go out of Sri Lanka to other countries to learn this. So if we produce it here in Sri Lanka, and probably I think with the cooperation of the GMOA, if we can maintain the required standards, because GMOA is not against establishing private medical schools, it is against the private medical schools without standards. So GMO can help the government, help these private sector institutions to bring up the standards.
But they've not done it for some time.
That's why I am asking them, because that's the social responsibility which GMA has failed to fulfill. The GMA is just opposing without giving us a solution.
Protection of the territory.
Protection of the territory, and they don't give us a solution. So what I would suggest to GMO is that, as Mr. Gunasekara suggests, they should hire economists. I would suggest to them that they should actually function as consultants in the establishment of private medical schools in Sri Lanka, so that we don't have this problem.
What is your take on this, Mr. Gunasekara?
Same. I totally agree. In fact, if I go one point further, I feel that the GMOA has to understand that this private medical college that is in existence now has to be supported. Because those are students, back again, who have gone, they have paid their money. Now, if the GMOA feels that they should not be granted training in the government hospitals, that is a fundamental error that the GMO is making. Get the students to pay, get the institutes to pay to the government, whatever charges, but they must be given that opportunity. They must be afforded that opportunity. This is one area I feel that the GMO has to rethink its strategy and policy.
And not demand.
Because in fact recently I saw a statement in the newspapers where the GMO has called the government to take over this Malabe private medical college, to nationalize. That is not the answer. That is certainly not the answer. Tomorrow somebody might say, privatize the private hospitals also. Nationalize the private hospitals also. Are we going to do that? No, you can't. You must assist the private medical college. That is fundamental. They must rethink their strategy. They must change their strategy.
Dr. Alutge, things to take back home. Hire economists and now consultants. Agree in agreement or not?
With regard to the Malabe PMC, we have to take many things, because the SLMC is guiding the Malabe medical schools to improve their standards. But the thing is that we don't see that the management of the medical faculty getting it done quite right. Therefore, that is why we have asked to nationalize this medical school and to keep up the standards.
But that's not the way out. That's not the way out.
But the thing is that the management is not going through the SLMC guidelines, and therefore the government statutory body is the SLMC, and therefore we think that the government should take off this institute and have the standards
Dr. Alutge, can't you get a court order that compels this college to adhere to the SLMC's guidelines?
That the government should do.
Isn't that better than getting it nationalized? Because if you nationalize it, it's another cost on the government.
It's another cost for the government.
Another cost on the government. Isn't it better to take the matter to court and get an order from the court saying this college must adhere to the guidelines of the SLMC?
Actually, the Health Ministry and the SLMC should do that, and we can support.
Why can't the GMOA do this?
We don't want to give legal advice to Dr. Alutge or his organization. That is up to them to decide. Yes, for us, please pose your question.
Dr. Alutge, whose job is it to monitor this private medical college? Is it the job of the SLMC or is it the job of the GMOA?
SLMC should do that, and as a professional group. And
so why are you getting involved? Again, you're getting involved. You're getting involved in these other things, and you're getting involved.
Representing 40 other professional bodies for us. That may be the reason.
Well, the thing is, but you don't have a mandate.
We have a mandate because
what is your mandate?
This medical school is producing doctors, and
but that's not your mandate. You
have
an
mandate
option
because
to go
we go by the constitution of the GMOA, and our constitution clearly says that we can involve in these sort of issues.
So when you
I don't think we should step into the mandate or the toes of the GMOA. Just pose the question accordingly.
Right. So when are you going to ask for the closure of one of these other private hospitals?
If the standards are lacking, that is the problem, because this.
So do you have a monitoring agency? Do you guys go out there and check?
The SLMC had said that it
lacks. But that's not your organization.
But the thing is that this private medical college is producing low quality doctors, and therefore they will come to the open forum and they will.
That's your opinion. That's not what the SLMC is saying. They should be saying that. Why is the GMOA getting involved in matters?
Because it affects the health sector of the Sri Lankan.
But you're a trade union, aren't you?
Yeah, we are trade union, and once this is affected by the health sector is affected by these sort of things, we have to get involved.
But you have no mandate. You're just doing it off
we
your
have the
own
mandate
back.
according
Again,
to the
as I said before,
constitution.
you cannot ask Dr. Alutge to explain the mandate of the organization.
Perhaps on another show, Shamir.
So economists and consultants, some advice for you, Dr. Alutge. Are you in agreement for those suggestions? Are you open for these suggestions?
Yeah, we are open for the discussions, and at the moment also we are having a discussion with Trade Minister Honorable Malik Samaravikram, and also every other professors. We are very open.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alutge, for your thoughts. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We move on to our final round after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation, and it's the final round after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation, the final round. Let's start off our final round with Dr. Alutge, the Assistant Secretary of the GMOA. Dr. Alutge, what is the way forward for a country like Sri Lanka? If not for EDCA, if not for SEPA, what is the way forward? What do you suggest that we should do to move forward?
Yeah, we should promote the knowledge economy concept, and we should open the gates, but before that we have to have a national policy. That is what GMO is demanding, and national policy will cover all the aspects, and from the GMO's point of view, we have put forward the health sector proposals to Honorable Malik Samaravikrama regarding the Private Medical Sector Regulation Act and this knowledge economy concept, and also regarding the specialist registry and the evaluation procedure of the doctors coming from other countries. After doing this regulatory things and the forming of the national policy, we can move forward, and we can even go for a trade agreements with all other countries like the Western world and even with India, and therefore the GMO is demanding for a national policy, and we are asking the government and the authorities to have a dialogue with all the professional groups so that the more practical solution will be reached in this regard.
Dr. Alutke, we've already signed several agreements, bilateral agreements with other countries, Pakistan for an example. However, you do not cry out loud or say, this is not what we want, this is not what we want. However, when it comes to India, you all are very pessimistic. Why is this?
Yeah, most of the things we are telling is through our experiences, and
but that's the past, Dr. Alutke. We are moving to the future.
Even the present is not that good, because there is a big asymmetry between the two sectors in India and Sri Lanka. And India, for example, the Sri Lankan Medical Council, which is the governing body of the medical education and the medicine in Sri Lanka, they are quite open about the people coming to Sri Lanka, and there are some regulatory measures to govern those people. But the Indian Medical Ordinance and the Indian Medical Council, they categorically say they won't employ foreigners for the paid job. They will only employ the doctors for a charity work only, and the Indians are very closed in their system, and therefore if you open the gates for the Sri Lankans and Indians in the health sector, only the Indians will come, but the Sri Lankans won't have the opportunity to go there and practice, because the Indian Medical Ordinance categorically say that they won't employ the foreigners in India for a paid job.
Dr. Alutke, you spoke about a knowledge-based economy. You said before opening the gate, there has to be a national policy as well. Can all this be done overnight?
Actually, we have wrote this to the President, and he is very interesting, and he has the interest, and even the Minister Malik Samaravikrama is agreeable with us, and we are in the way as a joint professional movement in preparing this national policy, and we are having a working committee with the Trade Ministry, and at the moment we have had one meeting on last 16th, and we will meet again on 26th of this month, and we will move forward in that regard.
Why is the organization not in conversation with the Prime Minister of this country?
Yeah, we had a meeting with Prime Minister, and Prime Minister was very cordial, and he has guided the Minister Malik Samaravikrama to work with us, and even with the other issues we are having, he has directed the Finance Secretary and Health Minister to have a dialogue with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alutke, for joining us this evening. I now move my attention to Mr. Kesaral Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament and Deputy Mayor of the Devila Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. Mr. Gunasekara, you are the Deputy Mayor of the Devila Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. What have you done as a Deputy Mayor to uplift the standards of this area in question over the last few months or so?
Whatever possible within our reach, we have done, because you need to understand that we do not get much funds from the centre or the provincial councils, and as a result local authority activities are hindered to that degree. That's a serious problem. In fact, I have written several letters when Dr. Jayasundara was also there, that this has to be addressed, because if you go back in time 20-30 years back, the centre supported through the Finance Commission so many local authorities with regard to their work, especially with regard to the acquisition of equipment. Now, when we do not have funds for the acquisition of vehicles, etc., equipment, etc., our services do get affected to that degree. Barring that, yes, we have been doing a good job with the present funds available.
Your mayor is openly supporting the former president, Mr. Gunasekara. Where do you stand as a deputy mayor?
You mean to say my mayor is supporting the present
Former president.
I thought
very openly.
I thought he's supporting the present president.
Is he?
Yeah.
Where do you stand?
I also stand because you must understand everybody.
I agree with you.
Everybody has to support the president.
You're saying your mayor is supporting the present president. Okay, where do you stand?
Well, you have to. Everybody has to be with the president. I feel. If we are to take this country forward, we have to work with the president. If the president moves and somebody else comes in, you support him. I think that should be the way forward. We have to understand that our mindset has to change. If we don't change our mindset, we are in serious trouble.
Do you think the mindset has changed from the top-notch position at your council itself?
I think it has changed.
It has changed. EDCA and country's economy, where do you see ourselves moving forward in the next few months?
We can move forward, but there is one concern which was raised by Dr. Alutke, which I am in agreement, I feel is a fundamental flaw. Most of our ministries or sectors do not have what is called a national policy. I am sure Dr. Vijayawardena will agree with me. And the GMO is concerned with regard to the health. Yes, I totally agree. But as to whether a policy can be formulated within a short period, I don't think so. But we have come a long way without a policy, which is very strange. The government has to understand that policies, national policies are fundamental. And if we do not have policies, we are in serious trouble. Let me tell you something else with regard to
very quickly,
statement made by, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi, but I am not sure. It could have been Jawaharlal Nehru also, in an international forum where he said, we will open the doors and windows of our house so that the winds of the world can blow through our house, but we refuse to be blown off the feet. I think that is the policy that Sri Lanka also has to follow. We have to open out, ensure we don't get blown off. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekara. We have to open our doors indeed, but we should make sure that we should not be blown out because of these strong winds. Finally, we have Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. A few months ago, Dr. Vijayawardena, right here on Face the Nation, I asked you a question. I asked whether Sri Lanka is bankrupt and whether it worries you. You said, bankrupt is a very harsh word to use. I'm posing that question once again to you. Are we bankrupt? Does it worry you?
Well, of course, you cannot say a country getting bankrupt, Samir, because country is not like a company. The main reason is a country consists of large number of economic units which still starts, continue to produce. Now, what would happen is now, by being bankrupt, I think what you mean is whether Sri Lanka would be able to repay its foreign debt.
Do we have the money?
Immediately, yes, we have a problem, because what is happening is, as you have very correctly put at the beginning of this program, $1 billion has already gone in January in payment of repayment of foreign debt and payment of interest. According to central bank data, another 1 billion we have to pay within the next 2 months. 5 billion we have to pay within the next 12-month period. And we don't have enough foreign reserves to do that. And what would happen is that in that case, we will have to utilize our unutilized borrowing capacity, raise money and pay it. But it will simply allow us to go through the problem for a short period of time. So in that sense, we are in a very risky and critical situation. I don't say it is bankrupt, But I will say we are in a very risky and critical situation right now.
Next 7 months, are you worried about the country's economy and
Of
the
course,
way we are
yes. I
moving
mean,
forward?
unless if we don't get this IMF funding, earliest could be around maybe June this year, we won't be able to protect Sri Lanka rupee.
Are the authorities doing enough to receive this
authorities
IMF
have
funding?
already started tightening up the monetary policy now. In February, the central bank had increased the interest rate by 0.5%, which is actually too short and too late. The central bank would have started it about 1 year ago, tightening of the monetary policy, and because when the central bank has a lower interest rate regime, it actually encourages people to import more. So our trade deficit becomes wider when the central bank is following a lower interest rate policy. So if the central bank had started tightening monetary policy about 1 year ago, we would have been in a pretty good shape right now. But of course in February they did that, but that is too short and too late. I hope that by the time they get the IMF facility, they would have a proper monetary policy package in Sri Lanka.
Whenever the IMF has come into play, whenever they've provided us a standby arrangement, Dr. Vijayawardena, we've had to tighten our belts. Is that something that we have to expect in the near future as well? Will these budget proposals that talk about concessions, would all these proposals be implemented if this comes into play?
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister has very correctly put it in his economic policy statement. He has said that we are living beyond our means. So we had been living beyond our means. Now of course another foreign party will have to come and tell us, okay, tighten your belts. So it's a natural thing when somebody has overspent himself, he doesn't have any more resources, then there's no any other solution available.
Before we wrap up this evening's show, Dr. Vijayawardena, by June this year, the tenure of the governor of the central bank comes to an end. Are you in the running to the post of governor?
No, I am a retired central banker now, and I enjoy coming here facing the nation. And also, you have said that I am running a school here.
In the hot seat.
Yeah, I was in the hot seat also with Farah. So I enjoy that kind of work rather than being the governor of the central bank.
Who do you think should be the governor of the central bank? Do you think that the tenure of the current governor should be extended?
That of course I don't want to comment on that, but Joe Nexter, who drafted the Montrolo Act in 1949, he had given the broad qualifications which the governor of the central bank should have.
And this
he
governor
has
does
said
not possess
the
those
person
qualifications?
who holds this high position should be a person of unquestioned integrity.
Absolutely.
So whoever
yeah.
comes to that position should be a person of unquestioned integrity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijayawardena.
A way forward, it has to. That's very important. Unquestioned integrity. It's very important.
Integrity, absolutely, Dr. Vijayawardena. Thank you very much for your thoughts as well. Dr. Harith Aludke, thank you very much for joining us this evening. The Assistant Secretary of the GMOA, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Thank you very much. It has always been a pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Vijayawardena. Also joining us this evening was Mr. Kesar Rao Gunasekara, a former Member of Parliament, and also the Deputy Mayor of the Devil Mountain Municipal Council. Things to take back home for the GMOA: hire economists, hire consultants. Things to take back home as far as the country's economy is concerned: tighten your belts if the IMF arrangement comes into play. Things, of course, to think about in the next few months or so. I leave you tonight with a quote: the longer you wait, the less fun. If you wait until the bitter end, the whole economy can be destroyed. Are we having fun, or are we waiting until the end? Take care and good night.